What's up, hybrids? Welcome back to another episode of the Fandom Hybrid Podcast. This is Hanako, and I am here with Anthony and Lori, and we are discussing episode 7 of the Wheel of Time series. And I like this episode because you get a little backstory at the beginning and towards the middle. We kind of find out Rand's his origin story, if you will, in this one.
Yes, it was an origin story.
Yes.
Finally.
Yes, finally. We have this woman who is obviously a warrior. She's in some snowy mountains. She's running. Seems like she's running for her life. And I didn't realize at first that she was pregnant until she sat down and you saw her grab her stomach. And I was like, oh, wait.
She's pregnant.
This somebody mama. Because of course she has a wrap on her head, so you can't really see her hair. But someone comes at her with a spear. And let me tell you, I was sitting here watching this whole opening sequence like this is one of the baddest bitches in the world because this woman is pregnant, fully pregnant, and labor. Man, these soldiers are coming after her and she is kicking their ass.
Yes.
Like multiple. You've got a couple of them coming at her at the same time, two of them. Then there's one point where she's fighting three of them at the same time. And she is holding her own. The only way she even got hurt, she got stabbed by one because he caught her in the middle of a contraction.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wait a minute. Who is this woman? Like, we don't really know anything about her except for what we see in this flashback and in the flashback later on after she is given birth. But I was like, I need to know who this woman was. Do they talk about who she is in the series at all?
You mean in the television series?
In the book, like, or
Oh,
is
oh
this
yes,
just
we know
something?
we know who she is.
Oh, okay,
We know.
okay,
Yeah, you find out who she is.
okay. Because
You
I was
you you
like,
want to know
she is
or
too
you want to
awesome.
wait?
I mean, aside from the fact that we just figured out that she's Rand's mother,
Yes.
you know,
She of course she is with the IEL. This is
I
during
figured
the
that out.
this is during the IEL, the first IEL war.
Ah, okay.
And remember the um the prophecy said that the dragon um the prophecy that Swan and
Moraine was
Moraine
discussing.
were
Uh-huh.
told, yes, that the dragon was being born on Dragon Mount right then. And this is
Oh
when that
yeah.
was happening.
Okay.
So this is when I think it was Jatara, more so was her name, and this is when she started having her vision. Was at the same time.
Ah,
So this
okay.
so this basically is tying into our theme for the year of the Arthurian legends type, king being born type of a thing, right?
Yeah, this relates to what Moraine and Swan were talking about the vision that the
Right,
dragon was being born.
right,
Okay.
right.
Okay. But yeah, so she's fighting in this beginning. Then, of course, after she kills everyone, including the person who stabbed her, and the side, no less, I'm like, this is well, I guess they didn't care, but I was like, this is a pregnant woman. You stab her in the side. Like, how low down is that? Like, he got the death he deserved.
Well,
But,
you can tell the Aiel are very serious warriors. They're very. I think I talked about this before. They're very
mm-hmm,
much like the Dune.
mm-hmm,
They're the same as the Freeman.
yeah,
They're very similar, and she is a maiden of the spear, and they are the absolute fiercest warriors that
I
the
can
Aiel have.
tell because, like I said, she was in labor having contractions and she was in active labor because even while she's fighting she's having contractions. We know, look, I know those contractions were less than 5 minutes apart. She was about to have that baby. She was like, y'all are not about to kill me while I'm trying to have this baby. Or I think maybe she was worried about the baby. Whichever the case was, she was whooping some ass. And I was just looking at that. Like, I think the first time I watched this episode, I rewound that scene a couple of times just to watch because if you didn't know she was pregnant, you would have never known she was pregnant. The way she was moving, the way she was jumping up in the air, and just amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, and as a side note, shout out to the actress. Her name is Magdalena Sotova,
Mm-hmm.
and she is actually a stunt person.
Well,
And
hell.
we've seen her work in Dune and Underworld,
Oh,
Carnival Row. She's been in a lot of different things as a stunt person.
okay. Well, well earned because she gave some spunk and some personality to this character. I don't even think we never heard her utter a word. We never heard her like we don't know her name. We don't really know anything about her except for what we see on the screen at this point. After she kills the men, she takes one of the capes, she tears her clothes so that she can try to have this baby, and then there's a spear or a sword pointed at her in the midst of her pushing, and it's one of these soldiers that she was fighting. Now we see later on in the episode that this ends up being Rand's father, and he helps her deliver the baby, and then she dies, and that's how he ends up with Rand. But
Yeah,
I
and you
thought it was,
see you see a clue with his sword
yes.
has the heron mark on it,
Mm-hmm.
which is the same as Land's sword because he's a blade master just like Land.
Ah, okay.
And only blade masters can put that heron mark, the little bird, on their sword.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, badass, complete badass. So I was like, okay, hopefully Rand comes by it, honestly. Hopefully he gets that, you know, that same amount of skill, but I don't know. We'll have to see. So anyway, going into the episode after that introduction, everyone is in the ways except for Matt. Matt took a look at the doorway in the last episode. He was like, nope, not going to do it. Absolutely not. He kind of stayed behind. So, um,
Did you ever see Candyman, the new version of Candyman?
no, I did not.
Oh, okay. No. Well, there's a scene where one of the characters opens a door to a basement
Mm-hmm.
and she looks, it's dark, and she's like, nope, and closes the door. And that's how
Somebody
Matt
was
was.
smart for a change.
Nope.
Yeah. But our little travelers, they're going through the ways, and of course there's a little bit of there's some discussion and disagreement there, because of course Rand wants to go back for Matt, and not Egwene, Nynaeve also wants to go back for him, and Moraine is trying to tell him, look, he made his choice. We have to go we have to go further. We have to finish this. We have to keep moving forward. And I think this is the part where you start to see a little bit of the breakdown in between the group. Like, I know the things that happen in the ways while they're there, they get caught by this black wind, and the black wind starts whispering like their deepest insecurities to them. And you can see it through the rest of the episode how that kind of comes in between all of them. They're kind of at odds. There's some things said that cannot be taken back and that sort of thing. But it's almost like once they get into the ways, you could feel whatever evil that's in there trying to pull them apart.
Mhm.
And there's something that's said later on in the episode. Moraine, she goes to see a seer, and the seer is looking at the four of them: Nynaeve, Egwene, Rand, and Perrin, and she's telling Moraine different little things about them. And Moraine is trying to figure out which one is the dragon. She was like, do you see anyone's vision stronger than the others? And she said, no, they're all linked. They're all like she's saying, they're all equally as important. And I thought about us talking in the last episode, because I was like, there was a mention by, I think it was Sawan, when they were talking about the fact that there were 5 potential dragons all in the same village. And we talked about how they had this connection to each other. And I was just still wondering, like, okay, so can it be that that all five of them have to be in sync in order for the dragon to be reborn this time? I think what was it that Swan said? Why would the will split the dragon soul into separate pieces?
Mhm.
And you said that it wouldn't do that, but
It
now I'm
wouldn't do
starting
that.
to wonder.
It wouldn't do that. And if they did that, there would be absolute rebellion amongst most of
You
the
think
fans.
so? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be such a departure from anything that
Mm-hmm.
would remotely resemble the Wheel of Time. Like
Okay.
it would completely like go against the lore and everything else. The Wheel of Time is very much about time turning, things being reborn, people being reincarnated. Souls are whole. Souls cannot be put into pieces. And if you do
No
that,
Horcruxes.
no Horcruxes, not in this show, not
So
at all. It would be totally. It wouldn't even be Wheel of Time anymore. At that point,
okay.
I would be like, we can't do the podcast anymore. We just can't
Oh,
because it's just it would be. I would be so. I couldn't even tell you how I'd feel. I would be beside myself.
okay.
I mean, they have already done things that are such a departure from the show. Like that would be the one thing um
You mean from the books?
from the books
Mm-hmm.
that would just completely absolutely ruin it for me. Like
Okay.
we're not talking about, making vampires shine in sunlight. We're talking about absolutely changing the very structure of what the Wheel of Time is.
Okay. Okay.
Um there isn't even a hint of a soul. Okay, there's a case of two souls occupying the same body.
Okay.
Now that is a thing in the book.
Okay.
Um, but splitting a soul into pieces, no, that would
Okay.
not work.
So you think that's probably more misdirection for those of us who are not familiar with the books.
I think it was trying to maybe a little bit, but I think mostly to show that they're all equally important.
Okay.
Now, remember, I was trying not to give away too much, but the last battle is near,
Mm-hmm.
and there aren't any Aes Sedai or Chandlers as powerful as the Forsaken, because the time where the Forsaken is from was like the Golden Age.
Okay.
Those Aes Sedai are extremely powerful, so the wheel had to put out equally powerful Aes Sedai to at least give the light side a chance.
Okay.
And that's why you get Egwene and Nynaeve, and why even though Nynaeve, Egwene hasn't shown her full power yet, but we
Mm-hmm.
have seen Nynaeve's full power. Yeah, several times.
Yeah.
And Moraine and Swan and all the current Aes Sedai, Leandrin, they are not nearly enough to defeat the Forsaken.
Oh
They're
wow.
just not powerful enough.
Okay.
If they track along with the book, they just aren't powerful enough. And the will put out people like Perrin to help, and people like Min, the the seer.
Okay.
The these people are being spun out. Land, they're out in this time because they are the people that Rand is going to need. I mean, we haven't scratched the surface of the people that he needs.
Right. Okay.
Um, so there's that.
Okay. Okay.
But back to the ways, I want to mention, I don't know if I talked about this on the show, but the ways, the Ogier, which what loyal is, where they're from, they're called steadings, and there are
Mm-hmm.
different steadings around the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When the
We talked
Aes
about it in the
Sedai,
last episode.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
when the Aes Sedai sealed the Dark One's prison, he tainted the male side, right? That's the basis of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the steadings were the only places that the male Aes Sedai could go and find comfort.
Okay.
And the Ogier allowed them to go to the steadings. This was
Mm-hmm.
before the breaking.
Okay.
So, as a gift to the Ogier, the male channelers, the male Aes Sedai, um, built the ways. They
Okay.
used Sidene to build the ways, and the using sort of like the theory of the portal stones, because the portal stones were able to teleport people from one place to another. There are other ways they do it, but They created the ways.
Okay.
And inside the ways were like ramps and pathways. There were these lush gardens because that's what the Ogier did. They were builders, they built things. It was like beautiful. But because it was built with the male side of the one power, it also became corrupted.
Okay. Yeah, because Loyal mentions that as they're walking through the ways, he's like, it's hard to think that this used to be lush
Mm-hmm.
gardens and trees and just the ways that he was talking about it's kind of like it's a whole different thing now because of course it's dark, it's dreary, it's a lot of stone. There is a void there that you can fall into. Again, like I said, it reminded me of Lord of the Rings when they were in the mines of Moria trying
Mm-hmm.
to get out. It has a very similar feel for me.
And I
um
think that's intentional because you're the quest they're on requires them to go through a dungeon, a dark pathway to get to
mhm.
their goal.
Yeah, that's a trope.
It is. It
It's a
is.
trope.
And the Black Wind, Ma Chin Chin, is there are a lot of theories about what it is, but it may have been a parasite that was in there that got corrupted as well and just kind of multiplied.
Oh, okay.
Or it just could be a part of that corruption that's in there because the ways are just completely corrupted
Hmm.
beyond our repair. The Ogier do have a. Remember, I talked about the Terangriel, the Angriel, and the Sangriel.
Yes.
Instead of using the one power, they actually use a Terangriel that would open and close the. They could actually build new pathways, but
Okay.
once the breaking happened, well, actually, when it became corrupted, they stopped making new pathways.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that was a gift from the men, and it's like this because of that corruption that was in their side of the power.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so as they're walking through the ways, you have these different little conversations going on where I think Moraine and Lamb were talking about, so what if it was Matt? And Moraine is kind of like, well, he did have the darkness, and the darkness was, the darkness from the dagger was feeding off of him as much as he was feeding off of it. And then Lance says, well, what if it's him? And I was like, I know he's talking about Rand, and I know she knows he's talking about Rand, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, Perrin is still there too. So obviously, Perrin is not, he's not the dragon, but he is something else that could be powerful. Right. And it's so weird because as they're walking through this dark, the cavern is pitch black except for where they have their torches. And he's walking and he was like, there's something up ahead. And, the camera pans to the front and there's nothing but black there. I was like, oh, those wolfy eyes are starting to come in handy, huh? I mean,
Hint, hint.
hint, hint, yeah.
But there are no werewolves in this world. They're just not.
In the ways or in this world, period.
This in this world, period.
Okay, so if he is something, he's not a werewolf. It would
Correct.
be like maybe a shapeshifter or something, or
Werewolves, as we know them, do not exist
okay.
in this world.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I got you.
So he is a okay. There are shapeshifters, there's werewolves, and then there are, going back to True Blood, to nature, where they're both at the same time, but they're not necessarily one or the other. So is this genetic or is this magic based? Is
I don't want
do
to
I make
know. I don't want to know. I don't want to
oh
know.
well, I'm just asking the question because I that's one of the few things, because I read the first book that really got my attention, because whenever they bring someone like that out into a story, they're not going to be the final hero, but they are going to have a very heavy assistant type role. And usually it's something that involves them that's going to help the person get to the next level. So for him, he's one of the most interesting characters about the whole series for me.
Hmm.
Well, it's your typical quest trope in fantasy. You have the knight, you have a beast,
Yeah.
you have a princess, and you have,
The
you
religious
know,
paladin. Yeah.
right,
Well,
and you have the sorceress or sorcerer. I mean, you have all the elements. You had your rogue, but he decided not to come.
Right.
You have all your elements of a good fantasy story.
Well, it's
Yeah.
I started to tell you earlier, this whole thing that I'm watching it because I've been reading science fiction fantasy all my life, so you. But this reminds me of a either a dumbed down Dungeons and Dragons or a dumbed up Forgotten Realms storyline. Basically, you just don't have Drizzt anywhere or Tasselhoff Barefoot. But this is what it's like. You have a coloring book, check mark here, check mark here, check mark here. It's like down the line, but the question is how effectively did they tell the story? Because just like Lord of the Rings, just like the Hobbit movies, just like some of the other fantasy stuff that I've watched, Shannara, they start out with the premise, but in order to appeal to the TV audience, they kind of go off on their own because they think, well, how about this? How about that? I say, instead of doing all that, how about you, for once, like The Expanse did, put out the actual story and see whether or not the audience like it, and then go back and tweak it second season. I mean, that's my 2 cents as
That's
far as
if they get a second season. You know, we just had this conversation on our Arthurian Legends show about how a lot of these shows they don't even get a chance to prove
right,
themselves in the
right.
second season because a lot of these streamer platforms or a lot of these companies are so quick to cancel them in the first.
Now we don't know about second season for this, right?
For Wheel of Time,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
they've
it
got
was
second
announced.
season, and I think they got renewed for a third season as
Third
well.
season. Mm-hmm.
Wow, talking about going on a leap of faith. Okay.
Yeah, they renewed it for 2 seasons at the same time, and this was
Okay.
I think maybe right before the end of the first season. Again, we're kind of recording this episode a little bit after the first season premiered, but yeah, I think they got renewed for season 2, season 3. Matter of fact, we already have a teaser trailer for
For season
season
two.
2, and
Mm-hmm.
I think season 2 is supposed to premiere sometime later on this year, but I don't think they've announced a date yet.
Yeah.
They probably will, maybe around I would assume they're probably going to announce a date around Comic-Con.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they'll probably have a full trailer by then too.
Okay.
By then.
See, here's my other little nitpick. We watch a lot of fantasy. And I keep going back to what I consider the gold standard, Shadow and Bone. Every time I watch a fantasy like show these days, I compare it to Shadow and Bone.
I don't mean to laugh. Shadow and Bones is a gold standard, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It is the gold standard because Discovery Witches is no longer on TV. And that was definitely a gold standard. Should have got one more season, but I mean, it's like you watch this stuff, you want to watch this. I mean, if I had my choice, I would watch Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, and fantasy all day long. Okay, literally, in and out of that order, and give me a good fantasy. Give me, what I have. But so yeah, gold standard.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Lori in that, because Shadow and Bone is one of the shows that I feel, when they did the adaptation from book to screen, one of the things that was different about it is that there are 2 separate series in this book universe that deal with 2 separate sets of characters, and the show very seamlessly wove those stories together to create the show. And I think it is one of the better adaptations out there because they did keep a lot of things that were central to the books, and they did tweak some other things, but the things that they tweak, I feel, enhance the story as opposed to taking away from it.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
Okay, there are two things. There are two things. Like, am I looking at it as an adaptation and how it's done as the adaptation, or am I looking at it as a standalone show without consideration of the source material? If I'm watching Wheel of Time as just the show itself and not considering adaptation, it's actually not bad. It's beautifully shot. The acting is actually pretty decent. The pacing is a little off, but when I compare it to Shadow and Bone, for me, Shadow and Bone is just it to me. It's not. I don't even know. I'm not as into the world as I am with the world here. I think the
Okay.
characters here appeal to me slightly more than the characters in Shadow and Bone.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because your boy brings it all down for me because I cannot stand Jesper and it kills me.
Whatever.
That's fair. But
I had to take my Jesper shot, but
oh
I understand what y'all are saying.
yeah,
Shadow and Bone, their production quality is a little bit better than the production quality of this show, but the effects in this show I think are much better than Shadow and Bone.
oh
I think it's really just a personal preference type of thing. I just take issue with Shadow and Bone being called the gold standard.
I'm
Because in
just
that
saying.
case, I think Lord of the Rings, the Ring of Power is the gold standard to me
Now I
because I
haven't
like
seen it.
everything about that show.
I haven't seen it, but I am going to actually give you that because what I have seen, gorgeously shot. The characters, the costumes. Like I said, I'll get into that maybe this summer, depending on when I have time. But I'll give you the standard of all standards is, of course, the Lord of the Rings movies. Once you get those, you move yourself down. Okay. We talked briefly about Mists of Avalon. That is another gold standard as far as shooting and filming. And then you move your way down. If this was Dragonlance and they decide to do, I'm going to pull one out of my hat, Legend of Huma, which is a huge story that they told later on. I think it was like book 18 or 19 of the series, but it's a legendary about this mythical warrior slash dragon and how they found it and took over the world and took it down. There was a prophecy and all that. If they would say, hey, we're going to do that, and Amazon's going to do it, and we have Wheel of Time, I'm actually probably going to watch the Dragonlance Legend of Huma because I'm watching this and it's grating on me because I want the Aes Sedai to be better. I want more Jush. And like I said, if we weren't podcasting this, I probably wouldn't watch this because it just gets under my skin just a little bit.
Okay.
And the only other thing I want to say is, as far as the quest trope goes, in you have Shadow and Bone and you have the Wheel of Time, which pretty much follows the standards. It's a little bit different because sometimes the writers will do the trope differently because they don't want it to be like with what we traditionally know as a quest trope,
Right.
with your all your standard characters. That's why I like the Rings of Power so much, is it doesn't necessarily follow the quest trope.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to say right now, but it doesn't seem like it's going to track that way at all.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just that in Shadow and Bone, you have all of your different players are all separated, and I guess at some point they will come together for
Mm-hmm.
whatever quest they have. Or here, we start out with the group together, and then they're questing together, and now they're starting to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually like the quest trope a lot, and most all fantasy, and we talked about this, all fantasy and sci-fi fantasy will kind of follow the same. You see it. The more you read, the more you see
Mm-hmm.
it. And
Mm-hmm.
since some writers like to do it differently than others, and sometimes the way the Wheel of Time is doing it in the show may not necessarily be your cup of tea, as opposed to seeing the relationships develop in something like Shadow and Bone, where you know at some point they're all going to come together, but you see the different pieces there.
Yeah.
And that may appeal more to some people as well.
Yeah. But
But
I
like you said,
actually
even the writers of that show knew that they had to go get the other book and incorporate it into the show because Shadow and Bone by itself wasn't going to be enough to support the show.
yeah, I think as a show, it would have been very one dimensional, and it literally would have bled into everything else, just kind of gotten lost in the shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the addition of the crows really enhanced the story. Because also too, like with the books, there are so many other things going on with other characters that we have not gotten and probably will not get. Um, the second season is going to be interesting because they are talking about bringing elements of both the second and third book into it. So we'll see. But going back to the Wheel of Time, and maybe this is because I don't know anything about the literary version of the story, but I actually have no problems with the way that they're telling the show. There have been a couple of times where it's just kind of like, okay, I feel like we need more information, but also I know that a lot of times with shows like this, they'll tell us the story that's happening now, and then like we got at the beginning of this episode, you get little pieces of the past to kind of come in and fill in those elements, and then you get other elements of the story told in different ways that were completely unexpected. Like I completely did not expect the whole thing with Lan's backstory. That came out of nowhere for me, but I love the way that they told it because I feel like it came about very organically. Like, of course, he's in this new place that we've not been introduced to, and it's like when they walk into the palace, immediately everyone there is like showing him respect. Which, if you think about the way that they've set this world up, the Aes Sedai are the important ones, and the warders are important, but they're not as important as the Aes Sedai. They're there basically as props, as support. And so the fact that when they walk in, it's Moraine and Lan together, and everyone, they greet him first, and they say, the Daishin, that nickname. I was like, okay, that's something important, because the way it's almost like the roles reversed with them. Like they spoke to him first, and then they spoke to Moraine. Even the leader, the lord of the castle, spoke to Lan first, and then spoke to her. And they throw little things in there, like the guy said, "Welcome home," you great ugly bastard, or something. Just very playful. But I was like, okay, so this is where Lan is from. So naturally, they would greet him, but it's the level of respect that you see them show him. And I was like, oh, he's somebody very important here.
We can, if you want to keep going with the other stuff, we can circle back to Lan if you
We
want to.
can. Because
Let's
we definitely coming back to circle back to Lan, because the way that story even came out, I'm like, oh yeah, we need to talk about that. But yeah, let's go back to the ways. Um, so yeah, while they're sitting there resting, of course, a Trolloc shows up. And this is apparently one of the things that's not supposed to happen. Like, Trollocs are not supposed to be in the ways, but as they mentioned, that could explain how the Trollocs got to the two rivers undetected, because that has been the question. Even when Moraine was at the tower, they were like, so how did Trollocs, like thousands of Trollocs, get to the two rivers and you didn't warn anybody? And she's like, well, I kind of didn't know they were coming. How did you not know this? But if they were traveling through this mystical, magical, interdimensional space, then no one would know, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the Trollocs come and they start running, and they mention Machin Shin, which is the Black Wind.
Black Wind.
And Moraine tells them, whatever it says to you, Machin Shin will try to talk to you, or will talk to you, will speak to you. Don't listen to anything it says. And then Machin Shin starts talking. And the things we hear him say to the different people, like he tells Moraine that she's leading them to their death. She's not going to be able to accomplish anything that she wants. It tells Nynaeve that she won't be able to protect them. She's going to hear their screams just like she heard her parents' screams. It tells Perrin that you really wanted Layla to die because you loved another woman more than you loved your wife. And it tells Egwene, you're an imposter,
A
a
fake, an
fraud.
imposter.
Yeah, you're an imposter, a fraud. And it tells Rand, Egwene will never love you as much as you love her. She left you once, she'll leave you again. And Lan, I think it says something to him about you won't be able to protect her. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh, okay. So this thing is basically telling everybody their their
Deepest,
deepest,
darkest fear.
right.
Yeah.
But it's almost like it affected Nynaeve more because it says, you won't be able to protect them. They'll die screaming, just like you heard your parents. You'll do nothing to save them. And she's like, okay, you know what? Fuck you. And she stands up on like one of the perches. And what it says, one by one,
One by one,
until
you'll have nothing.
you'll have
Till you
nothing.
have nothing and no one.
And she gets up there, Lan tries to stop her, and she's just walking and she lets out this no and this scream and this big ball of white light. And that's the crazy thing. It was contained. It's not like it was white light all over. She made this ball to protect all of them
Mm-hmm.
from the black wind. And I was like, yeah, there's something more to this girl than they all have any idea about it, because she was powerful. And I think this was the first time that Perrin and Egwene really saw her do that. I don't think Rand has seen it either, but we
No.
didn't see like his reaction. But you see Perrin and you see Egwene looking at her like, holy shit, is she
I
doing
think
it?
only Moraine, was she even conscious when she healed everyone?
I don't think so.
I don't think anybody was.
I don't
I have to go back and see who ran into the cave because she ran into the cave with some
Yeah,
other people.
but she was one of the people who also got injured when
Yeah.
the false dragon, I forgot what it was, he exploded something.
The
And they
dagger
were
was
all,
it was either an axe or a dagger. I think it was an axe.
I think it was an
It
axe,
was an axe,
because there
yeah.
were a
It shattered
lot
it.
of pieces that
Hmm.
went into all those people. So I don't know, maybe Moraine saw a little bit, but I don't remember. I
But
don't
she knew it
remember.
had to be a lot because she healed everybody
Yeah, because
in the
like we
cave.
said, Lan was pretty much almost dead.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, so while Nynaeve is blocking the black wind from getting to them, Moraine is opening up a portal to go not to where they wanted to go, but to go to, I forgot what was the name of the place.
Was it formatting? I can't
Mm,
remember. Fal Dara.
yes, that one, Fal Dara. But there was something interesting in the caves when the black wind was coming at them and the Trollocs were coming towards them. And I wasn't sure if I saw it correctly until he appeared later on in the episode. But Pat and Fane was in the waves.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, him evil. Because I was like,
He
that had
bad.
to that
He's a
had to be
bad
how the
man.
Trollocs like, and I don't know. Of course, we don't really see him much through the rest of the episode. There's a scene where Perrin and Egwene and all of them, they're walking through the town, and Perrin sees him and he stops and he looks, and Nynaeve is like, what's wrong? He was like, just saw Pat and Fane. And she was like, no, he was in the two rivers when the Trollocs attacked. He's dead. And Perrin is like, I know what I saw. I know what my wolfy, whatever weird golden eyes saw. That was Pat and Fane. So I was like, okay, so obviously he has some nefarious thing that he's a part of, but again, we don't really see him in this episode. You see him briefly in the cave, you see him when he walks out of the caves, and you see him when he's walking through the city. But I was like, so was he the one that let the Trollocs in the ways? And if so, then what does that mean he is? Because when we first meet him, he's just a cart vendor.
Yeah, I don't know to keep the book and this show separate. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know where they're going with him, so I don't want to say he's not the one that brought the Trollocs. I don't
Okay.
want to say that, but the show's making me think that the way they're writing it, he did.
Okay.
See, I get that too because
But
I'm with Anthony with the books versus the TV.
but that mean that would have meant that he would have had to go. He would have gone all the way to the Blight, find a portal that he could open, and then he went first, and then sent the Trollocs, and the Trollocs came through later.
Mm.
But I don't know
I don't know if the
the
Trollocs had that
logistics.
kind of self
Yeah,
control.
the logistics of it, you know, don't
Yeah.
really math for me.
Okay.
But I could see kind of where they're going. That might be one of the things they're going with.
So Anthony, my question is that if you are a follower, obviously he is, do you get power the more devoted you are to the cause, or do they just give you like just a one time maybe extra protection and then you sort of do their bidding type of a thing?
That's a difficult question to answer.
Oh, come on.
Okay, let me ask a simpler
Well,
one.
I'll tell you. Okay, in general, there is the true source, which is where all the power comes from, and then there's the one power, and the one power is divided into Sidin and Sidar, which is the male and female side of the power, the one
Mm-hmm.
power. The dark one, he does have the ability to give people access to the true source.
Okay.
And that's all I'm going to say. Now, in the
Okay.
book, Patton Fane is not a channeler.
Okay. All right. That's kind
Is
of what
he
I was
If
what
that,
asking.
if
is
that
he
makes
what
sense.
they consider a dark
A
friend?
dark friend. This looks like they're. It
That's what it because that's what it looks like
seems
they're
like he's looking like he's a dark friend,
okay.
Oh,
but
okay.
he's also sort of con man. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's sort of out for himself and is trying to get over on people. And he could also be looking at this as a way to kind of he's is his desire to want to have more and take from people
Mm-hmm.
could be something that the dark one is using to manipulate him.
Okay. Okay.
But he could also be a dark friend. But like right now, the dark friends don't try to be out in the open too much because I Sedai tend to squash them.
Well,
And actually,
technically speaking, he wasn't either. Like he was in the caves, and the only reason why I saw him was because you had the light from Nynaeve's. I don't even know what you want to call it, reaction, explosion, whatever. And you just kind of saw him over to the side, and it's almost like the way that with the coloring of his clothes and the way that the lighting was, if you weren't really paying attention, you would have missed them.
mm-hmm.
Like so he wasn't there obviously, and then obviously he came out long after they had already entered the city. And you know, I don't know if him passing by Perrin in the city was something on purpose, but nobody else noticed him.
It was clearly on purpose because he was laughing when he walked by.
Oh, was he? I didn't even see
Yes,
that.
he was laughing. He was
Ah,
laughing. He was
okay.
from behind. He was laughing, and
Ah.
he also did that earlier when he popped up in the background. We didn't see it. He was smiling too. So this is like a game for him.
Mm.
But yes, I do believe they're trying to make him out to be a dark friend. But
Okay.
um, I also consider the possibility that they're gonna meld a lot of characters together, and it's possible that they're going to meld him with another character that shows up later. So I'm still
Okay.
trying to figure that out. But
Okay.
for the purposes of the show, because like the bartender, she was a dark friend, but you didn't know it until she told you, and that's usually how dark friends operate.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking about the bartender that was in this
Oh no,
episode and
not
not the
men.
one
Men,
from
yeah,
yeah.
men is not a dark
Okay.
friend.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So they come through the
But so to
waves.
answer Lori's original question is yes, but it doesn't really have anything to do with devotion when he does that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Because yeah, that was in the back of my mind. Because like I said, you see him, pops up, pops in, pops out. So okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
all the Forsaken are former Aes Sedai, so they already have access to the one power.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, didn't know that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, I'd say that during the golden age
Mhm.
of 3,000 years ago,
Mhm.
those Aes Sedai that turn to the dark side are the Forsaken.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so they're out of the ways now. They're entering Fal Dara. And I was like, I'm guessing Lan's identity is not really that much of a secret because Loyal, when they were walking through the gates, he said, "How long has it been since you stepped inside these gates?" Lan never answered him, but I was like, oh, so Loyal knows that this is where Lan is from. So is Lan's identity well known?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, his Malkir is his home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Malkir, because the Borderlands, they border along the Blight.
Mm-hmm.
Fal Dara and Shinar are different places. Malkir is further north,
Okay.
and it was overtaken by Trollocs and the Blight.
Okay. And the
And
blight is something like they started mentioning this thing in this episode, and I was like, what is the blight?
yeah,
Then
there's one criticism that I really have with this show is they don't give you a lot of necessary information,
mm-hmm.
like things that you need to know. Like I don't know if they were holding back about the blight for some reason. I think they mentioned in passing before, but the blight is fairly important.
Yeah, yeah, and it's fairly huge from what we see at the end of the episode because we see Rand and Moraine getting ready to enter it. And it's like this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like this huge magical overgrowth that literally swallows up cities. Is that
It's the forbidden forest, but yeah.
oh
It's
okay.
it is okay. Not gonna get too technical, but this
Mm-hmm.
is how I like to describe it. It is the Dark One's physical manifestation of his corruption in the world.
Okay. And it
And
looks like
I'll leave
those
it at
vines
that.
from Evolution that I was
Yeah.
talking about on another show. But yeah, that it looks
And
like
it's just creeping down, and the Trollocs living there, and that's what the Shinar and Faldar, that's what they talk about fighting all the time.
okay,
They're keeping the Trollocs at bay from
right.
invading.
And apparently this thing takes over like it takes
It,
over the land, it takes
yeah,
over the cities, and
that's what happened
um
to the Seven Towers of Malkir, that where land is from. It was
yes.
overtaken,
And we
and
find that out. We'll talk about that later because I got some other stuff to tie in with that whole conversation. But like I mentioned earlier, this is where we realize, like I said, you realize that Lan is someone important because of the way that the soldiers, when they come in and they see him, it's like their whole body language changed. Like they stood up straighter and they bowed to him, they showed him respect. And it's just the way that they said that name, Daishin, is like, oh, he's important because they're speaking to him. They haven't even addressed Moraine yet. And I don't even think they address Moraine until they're in the throne room with um Lord Algamar. Is that his
mhm.
name? So I was like, okay, Lan is kind of sort of important here. And this Lord, he is he is respectful towards Lan. He's respectful towards Moraine for a bit. And then he's not disrespectful towards Moraine, but he's very arrogant because before she can even say what they were there for, he immediately assumes that the Aes Sedai sent her because the blight is creeping up. And he was like, we know how to protect our own. We don't need any help from the outside, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, if you would let me finish. And then that's when he was like, oh, okay. But that's when, she was telling him that they were coming with a warning that, the dragon is gathering his forces and blah, 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 blah. And he was just sitting there looking. And the other thing that bothered me was the way he talked about his sister, because his sister, beautiful woman, apparently powerful. She mentioned they mentioned later on that she did go to the White Tower. She did train with the Aes Sedai, and apparently she was not strong enough to become one of them, but she is still, I guess
Yeah,
powerful.
I had mentioned before that the royal families of the different kingdoms will
Mm-hmm.
send their princesses, or anyone who's going to marry into the royal family, possibly being the wife of a king or queen,
Mm-hmm.
or if they're going to be a queen, they all go to the White Tower to train.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and they'll find out if they have power or not. And if not, they still stay there and train them because, the Aes Sedai like to manipulate everything. And, you know, earlier, I think you said something about people respect the Aes Sedai. Most of the common folk are very distrustful of the Aes Sedai.
Mm-hmm.
And even more so, the borderland people, they don't trust a lot of people who aren't from the borderlands,
Oh
and they
yeah, we had that
definitely,
conversation I think in the last
yeah,
episode because
yeah, and they
we were yeah.
definitely do not trust, they
Okay.
definitely do not trust Aes Sedai.
Mm-hmm.
And most of your kingdoms, most of them, even when you go to Ilion and Tyr, they don't care too much for the Aes Sedai, but the Aes Sedai tend to have their hands in everything, trying to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate everything.
I mean, that's why they drove Swan out when she used her power
Yeah,
because she's
and even
from the tier.
yeah, and even Logain, when Logain, he was dead serious when he said, 10 years ago, if I had said anything against the Aes Sedai, I'd have been flayed and hung and all that stuff.
Right.
Now, yeah, nobody trusts the Aes Sedai,
Yeah. Yeah.
which in Robert Jordan's brilliance is showing how imbalanced the world is.
Mm-hmm.
Because there
Okay.
was a time when everyone trusted the Aes Sedai, but then the Aes Sedai broke the world. So
Mm-hmm. Okay. The other funny thing that I noticed in this scene where, of course I'm starting to notice the change or the shift in attitude between Lan and Moraine when they appear in front of Lord Algamar. Lan looks like, even though they just came out of the ways and they were fighting and all this other stuff, Lan looks very neat, very well presented, very well put together. And Moraine looks like she has been run through the ringer. And I was like, oh, this is interesting how I don't know if that was on purpose, but every time that we've seen Moraine, she's been very neatly coiffed. She's been very regal in her presentation. And in this one, like, you can tell she has been through some shit. And I just thought that that was very interesting because, again, this is where I noticed even before he made his reveal, oh, Lan is someone important in this place, in this city. I mean, even the Lord spoke to him with kind of, reverence in a way. So I was
we'll,
like,
we'll circle back to that.
yeah. I was like, hey, all right. But she starts telling him about the Trollocs and the attack and how they may be using the ways. And I will say this, for him to be as arrogant as he is, and for him to say, oh, we can protect our own, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay, well, I'll come to you with a warning. The Trollocs are moving through the ways. And you may want to go ahead. She was like, I know you can protect against the blight, but you may want to go ahead and put a team outside of your doorway just in case. And he looked at her and he looked at his head of security. He was like, do what she says. And I was like, okay, this is one of the things I liked about him. I mean, we just saw him in this brief scene, but most of the time when we're given scenes with a male leader who has to deal with a female in a position of power who is trying to give him information that he does not otherwise have, most of the times they treat it very arrogantly. They treat it like, oh, you woman, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to pay attention to you. Oh, you're overreacting. And he doesn't.
Mm-mm.
Like, whatever his feelings may be about the Aes Sedai or anything, or how, proud he is about the fact that they can hold their own, when she says it, he actually listens and then he tells his people, okay, go do what she said.
Yeah, well,
I was
because when
very
he's not,
impressed with
he
that.
he's not stupid, and as much as people, especially the noblemen, especially the royalty of the different countries, don't like Aes Sedai,
Mm-hmm.
they do know that they know what they're talking about.
Right.
They don't want to be manipulated by them, but they sure enough will listen to them and their counsel and consider it. So he does have to show her
Mm-hmm.
that yes, I'm the king here. This is my country. We know
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing. And she's like, yeah, but you may want to do this. He's like, Okay.
Yeah. Because I mean,
Sure.
she even said that I'm not here to counsel you.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what, And she was very complimentary. She said, I nor any Aes Sedai have any doubts that you were able to keep the blight at bay. Like, we know you can protect your company, your country. But yeah, you might want to know they are sneaking through the pathway that they're not supposed to be in. So they may show up on your doorstep. And then you'll have to deal with the blight and the Trollocs.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's go take care of that. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting, that they kind of made that difference because when she said it, he kind of sat up and he was looking at her like, oh, okay. And you see him kind of sit there and consider it. And he looked over at his security while the security and his sister were looking at him. He was like, do as she says. Like, what are you waiting for? But okay, let's go to some other stuff. So Moraine goes to see the seer and she takes the four with her because she wants the seer to tell her who the dragon is. Now I was like, come on now, Moraine, you didn't really think it was going to be that easy, did you? But here is what she does see. The seer says that, she says the big one, and Moraine was like, what did she say? The big brooding one, and Moraine was
Mm-hmm.
like, they're both big. I'm like, no. Like Rand has some size on him
He's
for
not
for
big
a
like Perrin.
slim guy,
Perrin
but
is
Perrin,
thick.
Perrin is the one I'm gonna look at and I'm gonna run the other way because I'm not about to get into a fight with him. Perrin looks like, and it's the funniest thing because he has the most gentle persona out of all of them that we've seen. But yeah, I've seen what Perrin can do with an axe, not just by accident, but on purpose to those Trollocs. Perrin is the one that I'm going to look at. And if I have to choose whether to fight him or not, I'm going to turn my happy ass around and I'm going in the other direction because he looks like he would tear something apart.
Yeah, that's Perrin.
Yeah. So the seer says that she sees him with golden eyes and with blood dripping from his mouth. I was like, oh, that's not ominous at all. She sees Rand holding a baby. And when Moraine is like, whose baby is he holding? And the seer was like, how am I supposed to know that? You wanted me to see what I see when I see them, and that's what I see. See, no, I don't know whose baby that is, but he's holding a
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah, I don't know what that vision was about. I really don't.
Especially not well. Okay, we'll get to that later. But and then when she talks about Egwene and Nynaeve, what does she say? She says she sees a wall of white and then a ring of gold. And I'm just gonna assume because when they showed us kind of like what she
Oh, she
saw
said a
with
white
them,
flame.
a
She said a
white
white
flame.
flame.
Okay.
Yeah, and a ring of gold.
But like when she was telling Moraine what she saw in Perrin and Rand, we were actually seeing her vision the way that she was seeing it. So we saw like Perrin's face kind of come out almost like it was an astral projection
Mm-hmm.
with the gold eyes and with the blood. And then you see like an astral projection of Rand standing up and holding a baby while Perrin and Rand are sitting at the table. But I noticed that when she told Moraine what she saw for Nynaeve and Egwene, they didn't show us what she saw. So it's kind of like, even though she said she saw a white flame and a gold ring, I don't know what the gold ring stands for.
Yes, you
But
do.
do I?
Yeah, and you know what the white flame is?
The white flame is the one power, right?
The flame of Tarvalon, and the gold ring is the Aes Sedai ring.
Oh, I didn't. You know what? I didn't even think about like that kind of ring. I was literally thinking of a
You think of
circle, like
a
a ring
circle?
of. I was thinking like a ring of fire or something of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking a simplistic ring,
Yeah,
but
that's
okay,
that's
yeah.
why they didn't show it because, well, one, special effects cost money,
Mm-hmm.
and two, saying it is the equivalent of showing it for them.
Well, I kind of took that in a different way because it's like if you think about it, like they've talked about Nynaeve being uh an Aes Sedai because of her strength of power that we've seen. But I feel like the fact that they didn't show us who was what when she was talking about it, she could have been talking about both of them, or it could have been flipped. Like, later on in the episode when Rand and Egwene are talking, he tells her to go to the White Tower to try to be an Aes Sedai. This is what she's wanted all along. And I was like, when did she say she wanted to be an Aes Sedai? Like, I don't think that was ever, like, I know Moraine was kind of telling her, hey, you could be this, but we've heard it
I
more so.
I don't know. I think I kind of felt like maybe she had sort of been leaning towards that. For some reason, I feel like she knew that was her path. Nynaeve is the one that's kind of fighting it. Nynaeve doesn't want any
Yeah.
part of it.
But I think the fact that they've been so specific about showing us the strength of Nynaeve's power, while Egwene over here, like, she's struggling to conjure. Like, she struggled to channel when Valda was telling her to channel, and just the little bitty things that we see is kind of like accidental bursts,
Hmm.
but they're small compared to Nynaeve's.
Yeah.
So
Well, she hasn't been training, so she doesn't really know how to do it. Huh?
neither has Nynaeve.
Yes, she has. Nynaeve has. Well, Nynaeve has. There's a reason why she was a wisdom so young.
Mm-hmm.
She has these incredible skills at healing people
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out what's wrong with them. She's been doing it all her life
Mm-hmm.
on such a small, meticulous, specific scale,
Okay.
like healing people,
Mm-hmm.
fixing people's bones. She's
Mm-hmm.
been doing all this stuff her life, and they may not have known that that's what she was doing. She may not have consciously known that's what she was doing.
Okay. I
And
see
even
what
when
you're
she was
saying.
talking about being able to feel the weather and sense the weather, that's her using the one power when she was
Mm-hmm.
in that first episode talking to Egwene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she may not know that that's what she was actually doing. I'm sure when she got older, she knew because she
Mm-hmm.
was hiding. Well, in the book, she was hiding it, that's what she was doing.
Okay.
But yeah, she knows she's pretty fluent in using the one power. It's
Hmm.
just that she hasn't had any formal training, but she has used it enough to know what she's doing.
Okay.
Egwene does not. Egwene has those emotional bursts, which is what the Wilders usually do when they don't have any training. And that's what she was going to do. That's what Nynaeve was going to do with Egwene, was going to show her how to focus her powers.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. That
But I
makes
think
sense.
Egwene kind of knew on the surface that this is what her path was going to be.
Okay.
That's why she didn't have a real big problem with going with Moraine.
Okay. That makes sense.
And even in the book, Nynaeve went with them because she didn't trust Moraine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That I
It was the
mean,
only reason
and
why she went.
that much is evident even in the show. Like, she does not trust Moraine. Um, but yeah. So anyway, when
So that's what
they
I took
leave.
the white. That's why I took the white flame and ring. The white flame, because in the book, her visions are not real specific,
Mm-hmm.
but they can be interpreted.
Okay.
And so the one thing is, she always talks about her visions always come true.
Mm-hmm.
That they have never not been true. Even if there's an option, she'll get both choices. She'll see both of them if a
Ah.
person has a choice.
Okay.
So seeing a white flame and a ring of gold, pretty much the White Tower, the Flame of Tarvalon, and the Aes Sedai ring,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay. So after they leave the bar, the four are in a room together, and Moraine and Lan come in, and that's when Nynaeve basically challenges her. She was like, "Look, just because you told us this is what we need to do, we may not all agree to do this. And we want to know what that lady told you. And you know, it's funny because Moraine gives one of her answers that's an answer but not an answer. And Nynaeve calls her a liar. She was like, "You forget, girl, I cannot lie." And then at this point, she's like, "Okay, so basically, I wanted her to tell me if one of you was the dragon, because if we go to the eye of the world, whoever's not the dragon will not return. They will die there." And all of them sit here like, "You knew this and you didn't tell us?" Like, oh, Matt had the right idea not coming through that portal. But it's the conversation that happens after this that is, I don't want to say funny because it's not funny, but this is, like I said, this is where you start to see the splintering of the group. Because, of course, Rand is pissed off because Rand is like, everything that she's told us, she had, what did he say? She hasn't led us incorrectly, basically saying, so the stuff that she's been telling us, yeah, it's been true, but do we have to believe it? Like, how do we know this is correct? It may not be us. And you start to have these conversations, and Egwene is like, look, we need to go do this no matter what the cost, because we came on this journey to save our family, to save our friends, so no one else would die. So I think we need to see it through till the end, no matter what the result is. Meaning, okay, if that means we die, as long as our people are safe, that's all that matters. Perrin is kind of quiet, and they start getting into this, this back and forth. Rand starts blaming Egwene because he mentioned something about Matt. Oh, that's what it is. Perrin is like, well, what if Matt is the dragon? Like, she could be wrong. We could all go to the eye of the world and still come back. Matt might be the dragon. He's not even here. And so I don't know, Egwene makes this kind of scoffing reaction, and Rand gets upset. He was like, "You never really liked Matt. You never really trusted him. You never really gave him a chance," and blah blah blah. They start getting into it, and Perrin, of course, he gets upset. "Leave her alone." He gets up and stands up, and him and Rand look like they're about to go at it. And Egwene was like, not Egwene. And Nynaeve was like, "Will you guys stop it? I'm so sick of y'all fighting over her like she's like she's something you can own." And the whole room got fucking quiet because Egwene is looking at her like, huh? And Rand is looking like he's starting to put 3 and 5 together. And Perrin is sitting there with his head down like, no, she didn't say that. I was like,
I got a wife. I had a wife.
"Oh, see it now? I've always seen it, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, dude, apparently you nor Egwene saw it because she looks clueless. Like, she is looking like, why would she say that? And then when you don't see Perrin react, it's starting to click in her head too, like, oh my God, he likes me or he loves me or whatever the case is. Rand is like, I should have seen this, blah, 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 blah.
I should have seen this. Oh my
I should
God.
have seen this. And Perrin very, very succinctly steps in Rand's face, and he was like, "The only woman I've ever loved is my wife." And Rand just kind of looks, and I think Rand knew that was not the fight he wanted. He just kind of took a step back.
The important thing is right before that, Rand is like, "Oh, it makes sense. The day you proposed to Layla,
Yes,
was the same day that me and Egwene got together."
Mm-hmm. I was like,
"That's a happy coincidence, my friend. A happy coincidence." Now, in the books, this would not have happened. This is not even a thing.
Yeah. I think
You know?
I think we talked about that before, because like you said, in the books, Perrin doesn't really have, I won't say he doesn't have a voice, but you said most of his
Everything is
dialogue is
internal.
internal.
Yeah.
So
And
Yeah.
it's been a while since I read the books, but I don't ever remember him getting in Rand's face like this,
Mm-hmm.
except to keep Rand from doing something stupid.
Okay.
You know,
Well,
like
I mean, Rand was looking like he was about to try and do something stupid. Like,
okay, I
you got
wouldn't
the.
consider like swinging on Perrin as stupid, but stupid like plunging an entire country into war
Oh,
type
that kind
stupid.
of stupid.
That
Okay.
kind of stupid,
Yeah.
or going off and doing something by yourself when you don't have any business to. Something stupid.
Mm,
That's usually when he and Matt would get into Rand's business. But for the most part, they didn't challenge each other really like this.
okay. Okay.
Because number one, this is not a thing.
Yeah, because
You
I was gonna say, something about one of your best friends being in love with your girl, that would be something to kind of, spark some discord, some
Yeah, and when I talked about the writing, I know they wrote this little subplot in. I don't really understand it
mm-hmm.
other than to appeal to a certain demographic. But otherwise, it 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 can't come. It can't lead to anything good between the
Right,
two
right,
characters.
right.
All the work that they have to do going forward, they have to have this absolute trust in each other,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and this does not foster that.
No, it doesn't. Like I said, it's almost like they're trying to splinter the group. You have Nynaeve who just unconsciously revealed this huge secret that Perrin was carrying. You've got Rand feeling betrayed by Perrin, maybe a little bit by Egwene, because he's thinking about what the Black Wind told him as far as, oh, Egwene is never going to love you as much as you love her, you know. And then you've got Egwene who is dealing with all of this revelation. Like Rand just accused you of not caring about Matt. You just found out that Perrin may or may not be in love with you. Nynaeve just is the one who just basically brought all that on. She's probably like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
And
I
if it
didn't ask for
wasn't
any of this.
and if it wasn't for what Nynaeve said, if it weren't for that, I would have said Rand was doing this on purpose. Like he was purposely trying to piss everybody off.
Yeah. I would have thought that too, because
Yeah.
I feel like even at that point he had already had his suspicions
Mm-hmm.
that he was the dragon. But anyway, so yeah, they have this little argument. They all kind of go their separate ways, or rather Rand he storms out of the room, and Egwene goes after him after Nynaeve tries to apologize. But I know Egwene was like, I don't even want to hear this from you right now. Like, you just blew everything up. And for what? Like you said, what, even if you had an idea of this, and I knew that Nynaeve had an inkling of it when they were in the caves, and you know, Egwene went to go sit next to Rand, and she kind of held his hand, and he looked at her hand, and he told her, he was like, come. And she laid down, and they went to sleep. And you could see Perrin look and kind of turn over on his back. And Nynaeve gave him this look like, oh, I know what that is. Even if you know this, keep your mouth shut. Why? Why
Yeah.
would you?
Oh, there's also the possibility that the Dark One is influencing them.
I thought about that too.
Like the scepter in in the Avengers,
Mm-hmm.
was influencing their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that it's already been in their head. He's been in their dreams. So it's possible that the closer they are to the blight, the more powerful the Dark One
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
That he can kind of push them, to kind of turn on each other.
Right.
So that could be another part of it too, and that's why Gwen wasn't able to keep him out. Now, Nynaeve wasn't able to keep that in.
Yeah.
Sad to say it.
Because even with men, when she looked at them, what was it that she told Moraine when she was talking about the vision? She said, if it means anything, the visions are clear. Usually the more important the person is to the pattern, and I guess that has to do with the will, the
Mm-hmm.
more important they are to the pattern, the clearer the visions are. And I felt like that was also, I don't know, her having the visions being clearer Does that mean that there's a more of a likelihood that that vision is going to come true? Like you said, her visions are never wrong. So
Right.
like
So
even
it's
though
not more of a likelihood they're true. It's more likelihood that it's accurate.
okay, okay, yeah, accurate because it's because what she sees happens in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and get the land stuff out the way. Because after this whole conversation, he goes to have a conversation with Moraine, and she's basically, he's trying to comfort her. She's upset, and then she's getting nostalgic, and she was like, "I'm just remembering um the first time we met here, and I feel like I've taken away your life." Like she was like, "There's more to life than me and this mission." And he's assuring her, he was like, "You haven't taken anything from me." He was like, "When we met, I had no life, and I had no reason to die. You've given me both, or he had nothing to live for. That's what it was. I had nothing to
Mm-hmm.
live for. I had nothing to die for. You've given me both." And I was like, y'all are having a different conversation than the conversation y'all are having. Because when she talks about them leaving in the morning, she was like, "Don't you have some goodbyes you need to say in the city?" And Lan is like, "Yep." And there's just this look between them. And then he turns to leave, and she says, "I really like her, the wisdom." I was like, "Oh, that's what that conversation was. That was that you need to go handle this, or you need to go have a life before we possibly go to our death." That was the conversation I felt like they were having. Um, and so we see Lan going into the town, and Nynaeve is following him. I was like, "Stop being a stalker. Do that." Anyway, he goes to he goes to a home that has some people that he appears to be very close to, and he knows that Nynaeve is following him. So he appeared. Okay, so he was sitting there at the table eating, right?
I know what you're gonna say.
And he sees her shadow in the window. And when she realizes that he might be able to see her, she turns to go away. And he's standing right there. I was like, did this dude just disapparate? Like, what?
No, I had this conversation with the person I live with, whom I'm related to by marriage,
Uh huh.
because she asked the same question. I said, I think what happened was when he got up, he smiled, he got up from the table. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
see him do it. Like he got up and walked away. And that's when she was like, okay, she decided to leave.
Oh, okay. Because she saw him get up.
She saw him get up and walk, and walk. I'm gonna say,
But the fact that he came in behind her, like, was
yeah,
there a back
that's
door we
scary.
didn't know about? Or
Yeah.
he scared the mess out of me, and I expected him to be there. I was like, like he got some magical powers going on. But anyway, so he brings her into this family, and the guy who is there, I almost thought that was his father, or
No.
some type of father figure to him,
Mm-hmm.
because of the way that he was acting. He's being very obvious when Lan comes into the door. He was like, "Everybody, this is Nynaeve, everybody." He's getting up like, "Oh yeah, come on in, have a seat," like being so obvious, like that awkward, embarrassing. "Oh, my son has brought a pretty girl home. Let's just fawn over her." I was like, Lan is probably sitting there like, this was not what I came over here for today. But anyway, so after the dinner, they're walking back to in the hall, and they stop in front of his room, and they kind of have just a little bit of conversation. She was like, "Thank you for including me." He was like, "Well, you didn't give me a choice." So there's like a little bit of a flirtation there, and then they stand there and look at each other very longingly and very awkwardly, like to the point where I was like, I can't watch this scene. Like, y'all do something so I can pay attention to the screen. It's that whole secondhand embarrassment. Like, y'all are standing there obviously
Oh my
wanting to
gosh.
kiss. Yes, obviously wanting to kiss each other. And again, you can feel the pull between these two characters. And then he looks at her, he's like, good night, and he goes into his room. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with him? But I forget this is a show and a world where women are the dominant creatures. So he's probably like, I'm gonna let her make the first move. I don't want to misinterpret anything. I don't want to complicate anything. Yada yada yada. He goes
Okay,
in his
so
room.
I have an issue though.
What is your issue?
He goes into the room, he closes the door, he's taking his clothes off,
Mm-hmm.
and she just walks in.
I mean, hey, she said she was gonna shoot her shot. She was like, the way you was undressing me with your eyes, I'm finna shoot my shot.
She didn't knock or anything. And then she has the nerve to say, you want me to leave? What the fuck you gonna say? He ain't gonna say no.
But here's the thing. I think for her, maybe her doing it that way, just kind of walking into his room, and even though she walked in his room, she still walked slowly towards him. I think one, she was trying to get up her own courage to do what she was doing, because I'm pretty sure that's probably a situation she's never been in before. You know what I'm saying? Two, she was giving herself time to read the room. She was trying to make sure, like, okay, is he really like into me, or was he being polite? Like, I think she was probably feeling that out. Like, okay, if he's not into me, he has some time while I'm doing this slow ass walk to say, I don't think you should be here. I don't think this is appropriate. I'm just not that into you. She's giving him some time to
Okay,
react.
so for argument's sake,
Mm-hmm.
if the roles were reversed, would we have the same energy? Like if he was a dude, she's undressing and he walks into the room
So, okay, I'm
without
gonna be
knocking.
honest. For me, I think it depends on the characters and the situations. If it's a situation where the female character is obviously not into this guy, then yes, that would be wrong. If it was the situation that we just saw, like I said, you feel them being pulled towards each other, but I think they're still in the space of, is this something we should or shouldn't do? Because again, he's a water for Aes Sedai. There's a whole bunch of other things that come with that. The fact that they can feel each other's emotions and what they're going through. Lan might be like, I don't want to be screwing with her, and Moraine can feel like there's a reason why Moraine masked her bond with Lan when she went to go see Swan,
Mm-hmm.
so he wouldn't feel it.
Well,
So
I agree with you, Hanako, but I also think that even back to the first time that they really introduced them, you could tell that this was one of these tropes where they were fated to be together, that they were meant to be, a couple.
mm-hmm.
So the fact that they did in this episode to me seemed like it was the right time, but I agree with the back and forth. My thing is that is this going to be where we're together and we're going to stick together, or we're together, then we're going to break apart and come back together over and over again? So for me, the scene made sense. I didn't really have an issue with it.
Yeah. And like I said, Anthony, if the roles were reversed, because of the energy that I got from the scene right before it, I think it would have been one of those scenes where if he would have walked into her room and done the exact same thing, she probably would have looked at him. And at that point, she probably would have just let her robe drop, because I feel like they understood each other in that moment. Like, yes, I want you, but I'm maybe afraid to make the first move. And I just feel like if it's a situation like that, Lan is very good at reading people. That's one thing that we have seen in the show. And I don't think he would have done that if he thought, one, she would have been offended by it, if she would have been uncomfortable by it, or if she flat out didn't want him. I don't think he would have done that. And I think in the same vein, for her, I don't think she would have done that if he would have felt any of those things. It's just it's something about the way they write these characters. And I mentioned that before when I talked about Egwene and Rand's relationship, like the way that they do handle relationships in this show. The parties in these relationships are very respectful of each other, even when Egwene and Rand are having arguments with each other. the most recent argument notwithstanding, because this was all emotion. But even when they broke up, when she told him that she was planning to become a wisdom, and him knowing that that means that they will not get married, they will not have children, he didn't pull that whole, well, this is not just your life, this is my life, you're ruining my life, this, that. He didn't pull that whole thing. They had a very mature discussion about it. And I feel like that translates also with Lan and Nynaeve. Like I said, the attraction is there. The attraction has been there since day one. Even when she held a knife to his neck, you could feel, oh, this is going to be something. And I think they feel that too as characters. And it's just like they didn't know who was going to make the first move. Lan being who he is, he probably was like, I'm not going to make this move because maybe, like we hear him say later on, her being a wisdom is similar to him being a warder. Like, she can't marry, she can't have children. So she might have been hesitant to approach him knowing, okay, I have nothing more to offer you. So maybe he was like, okay, if I'm just going to respect her, she's a wisdom, this is what she dedicated her life to, this is her calling, she can't have these kinds of entanglements or whatever. I'm just going to I'm just going to like her, love her from afar. And then she was like, oh, okay, we'll fix that. I mean, like I said, if it had been a different character, I might have been like, girl, that's not the move. That's not the move. But with him, I totally feel like it was totally the move. Totally the move. And if he had done it with this character and her, I wouldn't have been mad at him doing it either. I wouldn't have felt that it was intrusive or inappropriate.
Okay.
So yeah. So yeah. But yeah, so she walks into his room and she like walks up to him. She was like, do you want me to leave? He walks up to her. They start kissing. I was like, finally, relationship I actually thought in this. Like, that's how you do that's how you do a kiss. You do a kiss. So anyway. And then on the other hand, you have Rand in the courtyard and he's like practicing archery. He can't hit the bullseye. He's upset. And Egwene comes out. She was like, I waited in my room for an hour for you to come and apologize to me. And she's mad. And he looks at her. He says, well, I know from experience that when you really want to speak to me, you'll come and find me. Again, I feel like there's that respect within the relationship. Like, he knows how she's going to react, and he knows that, okay, if I go to her before she's ready to talk, she's either going to give me the silent treatment or we'll be arguing. That is not what I want. When she's ready, she will come and talk to me. Especially in young adult TV shows, movies that we see dealing with relationships, treat each other with that kind of respect or give each other that kind of space respectfully,
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I like about this show, because when she came out, she was still upset. When he responded to her with a smile, and that kind of brought down her walls, and they were able to have a conversation, and he even right after that, I'm sorry. I know there's nothing between you and Perrin. Oh my God, they're showing a young guy apologizing. What? But just the way that they have this whole conversation, and she was telling him, she was like, I'm not even mad about that. I'm mad about the fact that you think that I would, not fight for Matt, that I wouldn't die for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when he starts talking. He was like, look, if it is one of us, and she was like, even if it is, we'll deal with that. We could all, she could be wrong. We could all live. That sort of thing. And then when he says, I don't want to lose you, and she sees him crying, she's like, hold up. Okay, look, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out. We're all going to live. And then she tells him, and I think this is a thing that he probably needed to hear, even if it was the thing that he did not want to hear, because when she says it, I feel like that was the moment he made his decision. But she says, even if it is you, I will stand by you no matter what. I will have your back. Nothing will change. We will figure it out. And to me, that is so opposite of Egwene will never love you the way you love her. She literally is saying, if you're the dragon and you fix the world or you break the world, I'm going to be there regardless. And I think Rand was like, nope, I'm not about to do this to her. Because if he is the dragon and what Moraine says is true, then she dies. Then
If she
Sharon
goes,
dies.
yeah, yeah.
And I think at that moment when she said that and he closed his eyes right before he kissed her, I said, yeah, he just made his decision. He just made his decision. And of course
Yeah.
you see him get up from bed because of course they've gone to bed together. She's asleep. He wakes up and he starts having these different flashes in his mind. He's flashing back to when the Trolloc attacked and his father fought, and you see the heron symbol on the sword, and then that's when you start to hear this other stuff, and he finds out about, or rather he goes to the seer to find out what she sees for real, and that's when she tells him that she had the vision, and that was the vision that we were talking about, where she saw the next dragon being born on the mountain, the snow, blah blah blah. She starts telling him all these details about his birth that he never knew, and that's when he realizes that he's the dragon. And he asked her, he was like, do I come back? And she just kind of gets up and leaves the table. He was like, yeah, that's what I thought. And I was like, I mean, we've been saying it, but
I
it's
think
like,
he's sort of suspected all along
mm-hmm.
because
And
we
then
get
we
the
also see the
flashes
flashbacks,
of him
yeah,
using his
of
power.
him using the power.
He's been using one power the whole time because
Yeah,
he
he's
goes
been
out
using
there
his
and he
power.
hits that bullseye because he's channeling. He's hitting
Right,
that bullseye. And
right.
then we get the flashes of him using the one power.
When the Trolloc came in the cave. And I never noticed it the first time, but when they showed his flashback, I went back and, well, actually, right now, while I have it playing in the background, when Nynaeve, I mean, not Nynaeve, when Egwene threw up her arms against the Trolloc and the, you see the wisps, I never noticed Rand's arm coming around her.
Around. Mm-hmm.
And that was when we see he actually used his power to throw the Trolloc off. And I
Yeah,
was
she put hers up sort of like a defense, and then
mm-hmm.
he threw his to actually knock it off.
Yeah, and to protect her.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, Rand.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention that the Ma Shin said his deepest fear was her leaving him again.
Mm-hmm.
But here he actually is like, yeah, you go to the White Tower and I'll
Mm-hmm.
go there with you
Yeah.
and be your warder. So,
Yeah, he was like, you really think I'm gonna let somebody else be your warder?
right. And I think that's kind of cool because it shows you that, you know, even though that was his deepest fear of her leaving him, he would have gone with her,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. And I think she even said that she would not go without him because she was like, I made that mistake once. I'm not doing that again. And he was like, oh, if you go to the White Tower, then we go into the White Tower. You really think I'm gonna let you bond to somebody else? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. But then, the next morning, oh,
Can we go back to the conversation that Lan and Nynaeve had, their little pillow talk?
oh yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, because that's when we find out Lan's true identity.
Yes. Alan Mondragon, he is the Lord of the Seven Towers, Lord of the Lakes, the true blade of Malkir, defender of the Wall of First Fires, the bearer of the Sword of the Thousand Lakes. May he sever the shadow. He's also the Daishan, which also means Battle Lord. So he is the
Thief.
king of Malkir.
Aragon!
Yes, he is based on both Lancelot and King Elisar Telcontar, who we also know as Aragon.
Okay.
Um, he because Lancelot, I think it was Lancelot du Lac, which is servant of the lake, which
Yeah.
is clearly, the Lord of the Lakes for Alan Mondragon. So yeah,
Okay.
it's very, very close. And also a king without a country. He's the long lost heir. Was not really lost.
Right.
There are
And see, I
people of
think that was the thing. That was the reason why I was asking, was his identity known? Because when he tells her about it, because she says, why does he call you Daishin? And he tells her about, who
it's
he
the name
is
given to the heir to the
to
throne
the
of
heir. Yeah,
Malkia.
yeah. And she's looking at him like, wait, I just slept with a prince? What? Like, hold
No,
up.
he's actually a
Well,
king.
he's a king now, yes, but she
That
didn't
that's
know that.
yeah, it's still
She
that. But
didn't know that because
that's why Lord Agomar was treating him that way
mhm,
because he is a king.
yeah,
Um, he has, like you said, the house he went to, he was one of the guards that
served
smuggled
under his
him out.
father. Hmm.
Yeah, smuggled him out of the castle when the Trollocs and the Blight overran Malkir. But there
Yeah,
are
because they
Malkir.
killed his whole family.
Yeah,
So
they killed
that's
the
why I was
entire
like,
royal family.
yeah,
Yes.
so that's why I was like, is his identity really known? Because you think about, like, going back to Game of Thrones, since you just read that long ass title, that's what it put me in the mind of. But like when the Targaryens were being killed off, remember Viserys and Daenerys were kind of smuggled away as well, and they were kept hidden. So I just wondered if that was the same thing for Lan. Like, did they hide him? Was
No.
his identity known?
Yes.
Or so okay.
Everybody knew who he was. There are Malkir, as you see, there are Malkir people still around.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that they don't have a country.
Okay. Okay.
And he is the only one of the royal family that's left.
Yeah.
Um, if
So let
if
me
you
ask
remember
a
in Shannara,
question.
in the Shannara stories, in Shannara,
Yes.
that was the same thing. Was it Jorah Shannara? I think he was like a cousin to the family. He was like
Mm-hmm.
the last one left
Okay.
in
So
that story too.
so my question is, with him, being king with no country, whatever, whatever. If, say, the blight is destroyed and they are able to rebuild Malkier, would he still be able to be the king as a warder to an Aes Sedai? Like, how would that work?
I'm gonna say yes
Okay. Okay.
and just
I
leave it
was
at that.
okay. I was just curious about it because I was
There's
like,
one of
so.
the things that we don't get until later in the series is
Mm-hmm.
the game of houses, which is like the Game of Thrones, but the game
Okay.
of houses, that's where he sort of got it from.
Okay.
Is your title is very important.
Okay.
So a title is not something that you would hide.
Okay.
Everyone's title is important. Everyone's political alliance is important. Even though he's a king without a country, he's very important.
I was gonna
If
say, because it seems like, even, okay, so in my mind, the way I was thinking, like, oh, would they have hit him, that sort of thing. I feel like even if there was somebody actively trying to kill him, I feel like the people of this country would protect him
yeah,
just like they would their own ruler.
first and foremost, you can try to kill Anne if you want to.
I know. I'm just
No,
saying
but I got you. I
hypothetically.
got you. Now he's been, he's people have tried to manipulate him. There was a woman who tried to manipulate him into marrying her daughter.
Mhm.
She was going to do a compulsion on him to make him do it. So yeah, there are nefarious people out there, but it's nefarious for other reasons, not to kill him, but to bring him into their family
Mhm.
because of who he is.
Mm. Okay.
But yeah, he is most certainly Aragon. He's most certainly Lancelot. Even they haven't talked about it, but even his sword was made with the one power as well. So
Oh.
he has a
Okay.
power sword.
Okay.
Is yeah.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, I love the way that they had this conversation, because when Nynaeve tells him, she was like, okay, so I know why you're, so devoted or so loyal to Moraine. She was like, you're a king without a country. a boy without a family, and now you belong to her. He was looking at her like, I'm my own person.
I
Like,
don't belong
I
to
don't,
nobody.
she doesn't own me. He was like, I'm free. And I think that was really him trying to say, yeah, I may be loyal to her, but that is not, I mean, the way he was looking at her, he was like, yeah, but my heart belongs to you. He was singing Jodeci to her. He was like, yeah, just so you understand how this works. Yeah, I may be bonded to her, but this is something totally different. And you ain't going nowhere. Get back in the bed. It was just like,
That
but
yeah, that was funny.
that was
Oh,
long, that was very long overdue.
yeah. I also wanted to say we were talking about the fantasy tropes.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of the tropes that Jordan went the opposite on, because a lot of times it is the lost heir is being actively hunted,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to hide them. He's
Mm-hmm.
the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Everybody knew who he was. Everyone treated him as such, and no one messed with him. And they trained him, and they did all the things that he was supposed to do as a king. He just didn't have a country, and his
Okay.
people didn't have a country. So when you read like the Belgariad, where Garyon was being hidden, you have Lord of the Rings, where Aragon was being hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter was being hidden.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the one character where no, he was not hidden. Everybody knew who he was.
Right.
So
Okay.
that was one of the thing. Another thing that I liked about this story is it doesn't always follow the tropes exactly the way that you would think they would.
Right. Okay. So yeah, anyway, the next morning, Egwene goes to Nynaeve's room. Of course, Nynaeve hasn't been there, hasn't slept there. She comes in, and as she's apologizing to to Egwene for opening her mouth, here comes Perrin. So all three of them are standing there awkwardly, and then Nynaeve is asking them, "Okay, so what did you guys decide?" And Egwene is like, I'm going to the Eye of the World. I'm gonna go. We're gonna finish this out." Perrin nods his assent, so he's thinking the same thing too. Lan comes to the door, and she realizes something is wrong, and he says Moraine has masked our bond. She's left. And they were like by herself, and then that's when everybody realizes Rand, because Egwene is looking for Rand. He's not there. When she asked Perrin, Perrin was like, I thought he was with you, but no, we see he goes to Moraine and he tells her, it's me, I'm the dragon. And so they have left, and they are approaching the blight. And like I said, when we see the blight, it looks like this hugely overgrown, it's like they look like roots that's just overtaking everything. And I think the description that you gave earlier, Anthony, that was very spot on as far as it being like him.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go in, I noticed that Moraine is very careful with how she walks in. Like you have these big, thick branches, and then you've got the smaller branches. And I've noticed when you see her, she's holding her hands in a particular way, and she's only touching the smaller branches, and she's being very careful how she walks. And I was like, is this one of those things where if you touch it wrong, it's gonna grab you? And of course, I'm thinking the Last of Us in my head, because that's what we're discussing
Mm-hmm.
now. That's the other show we are discussing. And I was like, okay, so is this one of those things where if they step wrong, the branches are gonna grab them and kill them? I mean, when Rand walks in, there is the skeleton of a man sitting in between some of the branches. So obviously this thing does kill people and not just take over like the wildlife and the castles and all this other stuff. People who get caught up in there too, I'm guessing, die. So I was like, oh, okay. And what was it Moraine said? We have to travel through the blight to get to the eye of the world. Really? Why? Why? I mean, I know why, but yeah, this dude already said, I'm going to go to my potential death. Do you have to make him struggle to get there?
Right. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where they go with this.
Because I mean, and like you said, we saw uses of Rand using that power. Like, and I didn't even think about the fact that when and when he was with the barmaid and she locked him in the room and he opened the door, I had a feeling about it then, but
Because
I
what did she
wasn't
say?
sure.
10 men couldn't knock that door down.
Right.
He's
And
like,
he pushed like 3 times. And I was like, okay, so either he is channeling or there's something else about his character that we don't know. Now, if I had not known he was the dragon, or if I had not thought he was the dragon, seeing the Herculean strength his mom had fighting off men while she's in active labor, I would have been like, oh, he got some of his strength from her. Like she had to have had some kind of superhuman strength that she passed on to him. I would have thought that and been okay with it. But once we go back and we see the flashes, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So I don't know. Now we only have one episode left. Rand and Moraine have left. The rest of them are behind. We didn't see Matt at all in this episode, so I have a feeling we probably won't see him at all for the rest of this season. And then, of course, we found out after the first season aired that the actor who plays Matt has actually been recast, so we're going to get a whole different Matt in the second season. But I don't know. It's if
oh,
Rand is
we forgot to mention that Moraine told um Algamar's sister to send word to the White Tower to look for
oh
Matt.
yeah, we
And
did.
she told her, who do I tell? The Red
The
Aja.
red Aja. I said she finna have
Okay.
this boy killed. But I mean, again, she doesn't know for sure if Matt isn't the dragon either. Like Rand can say, "Oh yeah, it's me."
True. But it also makes sense that she would, because if she sent the information, Leandra's going to find out anyway. But at least if it goes to Leandrin, there won't be any idea that it came from her. You understand
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like it would it would be weird if she sent it to the Blue Sisters, the Leandrin like, But if you send it to Leandrin, then Leandrin's gonna be like, okay, this must be serious for me to get this
Mm-hmm.
information.
Yeah, for you to send this directly to
Yeah.
me,
And she
like,
may not even
cause
know that it's Moraine
yeah, cause
that's
she gonna
sending
be
it to
like,
her.
cause we gonna want this boy dead if we think that he's the next dragon, or if he think, or maybe not dead, maybe they'll just gentle him or whatever. But either way it goes, like
Mm-hmm.
Matt has already been having some issues, and I don't remember if Leandra knew what was wrong with Matt when she found out about Matt.
I don't think she
So,
did. She just knew that she had them. She didn't know.
and that he was sick, that he
Yeah.
had an affliction, but I don't think she knew exactly what it was. So,
No, this
I,
was a pretty good episode. I enjoyed it.
mm-hmm.
Has had a few issues with it, but I enjoyed it.
So what were the issues that you had?
Oh, I've had since the whole Perrin, the whole love triangle between
Oh, okay,
Perrin,
yeah, mm-hmm.
Egwene, and
Because I
Rand.
feel like it's
It's,
unnecessary.
it's unnecessary,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't serve any purpose. You
But I
know,
mean, is it? And I don't know. I guess it does in a sense if you think about the fact, like we discussed this at the beginning, where in the books Perrin didn't have a wife,
no,
but you said you felt like they put the wife in here to kind of explain why he is the way he is, because like you said in the book he has a lot of internal dialogue. Well, they can't really do it just internal dialogue on the show.
no,
You gotta kind of show what the character is going through. So I guess that's a way to visualize that. But also, I feel like the triangle is also a way to bring that forth, because it's one thing to have guilt about accidentally killing your pregnant wife. It adds a whole different layer if you accidentally killed your pregnant wife and you were in love with someone else in the first place, because then he'll go through that. Oh, well, she was only married to me because Egwene was with Rand and I asked her, and maybe if I hadn't have done this, it adds a whole different layer to it. It
it
gives more
does,
of a reason for him to be tortured.
it does. But
So
however,
I
it just
know.
seems like even
excessive.
not thinking about the book, just the show in general,
Mm-hmm.
it just it doesn't feel right. It doesn't seem right, especially them all growing up together.
And
It's not
him
like
being Rand's best friend.
right. It's like you didn't know what was going on between the two the two of them. You
Right.
know, y'all should have had. If anything, y'all should have hashed this out years ago. Like
Yeah.
this should have been something y'all already tussled around in the mud over, and
Right.
then squashed it then.
Right.
But it
Especially
is
if Rand was a child going to pick strawberries for Egwene, okay,
right,
that means it was obvious from a very young age that this was who he was going to be with.
right.
So, yeah,
And
I get
you,
what you're saying.
you should have put those feelings away, even because you obviously never took the effort or made the effort to say anything to her or anyone about it. You
Mm-hmm.
kept it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Then you should have just squashed it because you watching your friend bring her strawberries. That should have been your clue.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I mean,
and the way things were in the two rivers, everyone kind of knew who was going to get. They, I don't want to say they arranged the marriages, but they kind of
yeah.
pushed people together, and they were all pushing her and Rand together. So yeah, dude, you should have said something
Mm-hmm.
long time ago.
Yeah. If for nothing else than to get over it,
Yeah.
to at least voice it out there. It's out there. You don't have to sit with it. And then maybe at that point, once you realize, okay, they both of them know that you like her, are in love with her, and they are still together, that at least that puts some closure in your mind that okay, this is not gonna happen.
Yeah.
You
Because
know, and I
what
don't
are they?
think it
They're all like 20 years old. Y'all are kind
yeah,
of old now,
yeah.
you know?
But also the thing too is I don't even though I think he has feelings for her, he's in love with her, whatever the case may be, I still don't think it's to the point where he would want her and Rand apart. Like he looks at them and he sees them obviously, well, maybe not happy in this moment, but they're obviously together.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously have each other's back. They obviously love each other a lot. And I think he sees that, and I don't think he begrudges them that, but it's just kind of one of those things where it's kind of like you're happy for them, but at the same time, if things could be different, you want them to be different.
Right.
But yeah, I guess I can see it. It
So
is
it's just a little bit of an issue.
yeah,
Like I understand why it's there. It's just I don't particularly care for it
yeah,
because it just messes up Perrin and Rand's relationship. You know,
yeah.
like where is the absolute trust gonna come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They don't have that
But I
now.
think I think they did the same thing with Rand and Matt in this one. In this show. And I don't know if that's how it was in the books, but I mean, you said time and time again how they've completely changed Matt's character and he was not this way in the books. But
No.
there's a lot of conflict with him and Rand in here. Like he's had some hostility towards Rand. I don't know, maybe now that we know that Rand is the dragon, or at least we think Rand is the dragon, because he still might not be. He might just be a dude who can channel. I'm just benefit of
They
the
done
doubt.
made it
Benefit
painfully
of the
clear.
doubt. But
They
anyway,
made it
no,
painfully
seriously.
clear that he's the
But
dragon.
before we knew that, maybe
Mhm.
that's what maybe Matt and the darkness that was in him when he had, the darkness from the knife, maybe that's what that darkness was sensing. And maybe that was part of the reason why Matt was so antagonistic towards him.
Of course, that could be true. That that could be true.
Because if you look at the way things are, like Matt will say his little thing. I mean, Rand will say his little things to Matt when Matt is being an asshole or whatever. But for the most part, Rand has been the one who has had Matt's back this entire season. Like
Hmm.
even when Matt is fucking up, Rand is there trying to encourage him, trying to be like, oh, like when he thought that he killed the little girl and her family. Rand was like, no,
Hmm.
dude, you didn't do that. I think Matt
Even
did.
in the end, when he was telling Nynaeve, you didn't even get to try to know Matt. He's like he's defending him, and he ain't even there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
That's that there's from Rand to Matt, there would be that absolute trust. And I think from Matt to Rand, because Matt would know that Rand was there with him every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that with Perrin. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah. I agree. But okay. We got one episode left.
Yay.
But the good thing is we should be getting the second season sometime later this year.
Yay.
Sorry. I mean, I'm gonna watch it. You guys know I'm gonna watch it. It's just that I was so hyped. I mean, I didn't read the books. I went and I read the first book, started a little bit of the second. Because I keep hearing it's it's on the level of Mistborn and Gardens of Eden. It's up there, right? So when I read it, I was like, okay, I can see, and then when I watch it, it's like, oh, it's not that good. And I was so disappointed. I think that was my main thing.
Yeah, if you're into the books, this series is very disappointing.
Yeah,
yeah. I will say that. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
so that means I should wait
especially if
until
you
the
are
series is over before I start reading. Okay.
Don't start reading.
Okay.
Don't start reading it.
I'll just keep collecting the books.
And if you're like Lori, and if you're like Lori and you just started reading,
yep,
it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, it did, and it really did hurt.
It hurts.
Okay.
But like I said, I kept hearing that this was Brandon Sanderson all over again because he finished the book, so and how big he is, so I got excited.
Yeah, but I think Anthony, you said before you don't really care too much for him, right?
I don't.
Okay,
and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. He's an interesting person, but I will say I saw the sculpt for the new figurines for the book series that they're doing through Hot Toys and Toy Fair, and they look good. Oh, do they look so good? But then again, different book series.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you guys have any final thoughts on episode 7?
Internet Movie Database does list his mother's character's name, Tigraine Mantir.
Okay.
Which, we'll learn more about her later.
Okay.
So, Tigraine.
Because I was like, she is too awesome a character for us to not get any more of. So hopefully that means we'll see more of her backstory. But
I'll just say this about her backstory. You're probably going to be like, she did what? It's one of those things.
Oh.
Wait, what? Okay. All right.
Okay. Now, here I do have this one question. Rand's father did not know her before he came upon her on that mountain, did he?
No.
Okay, because I just thought it was so interesting that all the other people, all the other soldiers that were on his side were trying so hard to kill her. And then when he comes upon her, and I don't know, maybe it was the fact that she was in labor and he's, you see all the bodies around that she just disposed of while she's in labor. I don't know if maybe it was just some compassion for her about the baby, because when he took that helmet off, he looked, I don't know, invested in a sense, but then he gives her his hand so she can continue to push, and then of course after he cuts the umbilical cord, that's when she dies because she got stabbed right before she actually gave birth. But I was like, did he know her, or was this just random and he just decided to keep the baby once she died? Like, what are you gonna do?
It was random.
Okay.
Blade masters tend to be very honorable people.
Okay.
And yeah, maybe if she was still standing and fighting, he would have fought her and killed her.
Okay.
But she wasn't fighting. She was having a baby.
And she was vulnerable.
So he helped her have the baby. And he probably saw the wound and knew she was dying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a backstory to him and his wife having tried to have children and failed.
Okay.
So, to him, this was like his chance of having a child if he could save this child.
Okay. So was his wife, did she help raise Rand? Because I don't think they ever made that clear. When they were lighting the lantern for her, they never made it clear like when she died. So I didn't know if it was one of those things where she died, the story was she died in birth. I couldn't remember if they
Yeah,
ever had any dialogue about him
yeah,
and her.
she helped raise
Okay.
him to a point. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. I couldn't remember if there was some dialogue about that in
I
the
can't
first
either.
episode. There might have been, but I just
Yeah,
don't remember. So,
yeah,
okay. Okay. All right. Well,
yeah. And plus,
I
he moved to the Two Rivers, which was not where he was from.
okay. Okay. So, all right. Well, I guess since we don't have Mike here to give us a punny one liner to exit out the show, we'll just do without one. So that's it for our show. You can find us online at www.fandomhybrid.com. We are on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Fandom Hybrid. You can chat with us on our Discord channel. You can watch our videos on our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on all major podcast streaming platforms. Thanks for listening. We hope you join the conversation next time.